2021 was a housing market circus. Money was really cheap and everybody was buying. If people weren't buying a house, they were refinancing the house they already lived in. 2022 was the year of the market crash bros on YouTube. Everybody was talking about the housing crash. 2023, the Fed put the kibosh on the housing market. They jacked up rates faster than practically any time in history. Everybody stopped buying, everybody stopped selling, things ground to a halt. After 2.5 years of rates climbing, the Fed has finally started to drop rates. We're currently about a point below their peak, and the Fed has penciled in 3 more rate cuts in 2024, but some investors are actually expecting 6. In a normal world, 2 things would happen. First, sellers should be incentivized to jump into the market now that they're not locked in with super high rates. The rates are a little bit more affordable. And second, buyers that have been waiting on the sidelines for rates to become more affordable could finally jump back into the housing market. Pretty much everybody's saying this is what's going to happen. But how far is it going to go?
3 possibilities. Number one
is that we have way more sellers putting their houses on the market than we have buyers that are actually wanting to buy them. And prices go down in that scenario.
Market crash bros rejoice.
And there was much rejoicing.
Man, they're happy.
Option number 2.
Option number 2 is we have way more buyers than we have sellers. And in that case, buyers start kind of bidding against each other again like they did in 2021 and prices go up.
And we don't want that.
And we don't want that. We don't want either one of those. We want steady, stable.
And stable is
option number 3. We have an equal number of buyers to sellers and prices stay pretty much the same.
So we're hoping for option 3.
We're hoping for nice steady, yeah.
And we're going to find out how realistic that idea is.
This is a beautiful neighborhood. I love this neighborhood. We can't know exactly what's going to happen because my crystal ball is still in the shop, but there are 3 clues that we're going to look at today. 4 clues. There's 4 clues that we're going to look at today that's going to give us a really good idea of what the housing market's going to look like.
In this case, it is a clue.
All right, so there are 4 things that we're trying to look at here. 2 things on the supply side, 2 things on the demand side.
So on the supply side, we're going to be looking at how many sellers are likely going to be listing their homes, and we're going to be looking at how many of those sellers are going to stay in the area versus going to leave the area. Because if a seller lists their home and then buys another one in the area, it's a net zero for inventory. It doesn't add anything to the market. But if they list their home, sell it, and then move away, that actually gives us some inventory. So it's important to differentiate between the 2. And then we're also going to look at supply, or demand rather. We're going to look at how much pent-up demand there is in the Raleigh area, how many people have been sitting on the sidelines that can actually afford to buy homes. And then we're also going to look at how many people are moving to the area still
and
today.
Why they're moving.
And why they're moving. We've got so much data to back all of this stuff up, you guys. You're going to love this video today. And all of those clues should give us a pretty good idea of what's going to happen in the housing market in Raleigh in 2024.
Nothing matters but the facts.
Before we look at the first clue of where the housing market is headed in 2024, let me tell you about a market anomaly from 2023 that'll set the stage for our 2024 analysis. You know that I keep an eye on the data for you because that helps us anticipate what might happen in the future. There are 4 data points about 2023 that you don't usually see together. First, there were 17% fewer homes sold than the previous year, not surprising. 2, despite this, the median home price stayed about the same. The home crash bros were kind of off. And number 3, expired listings increased by 39% over 2022. Not surprising in a market with rates that high. And number 4, the number of homes receiving competing offers actually increased by 2%. Usually when we see expired listings increase, this can be a sign of a market shifting towards buyers and price drops. This is what happened in 2008. People were listing their homes and the homes just suddenly stopped selling, and that's when we saw those increased expired listings. But in 2023, at the same time as we're seeing more expired listings, we're also seeing a bigger percentage of competing offers. People want to buy homes, they just don't want to buy those homes. One explanation that I think is feasible is that with the higher interest rates and the higher cost of purchase, buyers were less willing to buy homes that hadn't been well maintained or that weren't presented well to the market. If buyers are still willing to compete for the good homes and walk away from the not so good ones, that tells us that there's an unfulfilled demand just waiting for the right time and the right house to buy. So here's here's the data for the Raleigh market as a whole. If you'd like to see this information for all the cities in the triangle, there's a link to that information in the description below. I've said before in other videos that we literally do not have enough homes for the number of people that would like to buy a home, and that's part of our problem. So new construction is absolutely essential for getting us back to some kind of normalcy in the housing market. So the next clue that we're going to look at right now is new construction inventory in the Raleigh area. So I found a report that's really interesting. A lot of housing start reports just don't give us the information we need because they look at raw numbers instead of the number of builds to the population ratio. Like for example, in LA, they're building a ton of homes, but not nearly enough for their massive population. So this report actually gives us the number of new construction builds per capita. The information was pulled from the Census Bureau, from HUD, and from some national moving relocation data. Raleigh is number 11 on the top 20 list for the most new construction homes under construction per capita. The only places building more than Raleigh are Dallas, Atlanta, Myrtle Beach, and Riverside, California, and the entire state of Florida. They're building like crazy in there. There were 6 Florida cities in the top 20, which is crazy. So definitely the builders are doing their job here in Raleigh. We've got lots of new home inventory, which is great. Clue number 2, more existing homes should hit the market and more people are leaving Raleigh. 61% of mortgage holders have been essentially trapped in their homes. Many economists are saying that 2024 is the year that sellers finally list their homes. And it makes sense because 61% of mortgage holders have rates under 4%. Now, usually when you own a home and sell it to move into a bigger one, the first home gives you a nice nest egg to put toward the next one, and you'll spend a little bit more, but not that much. But in 2023, that system was really out of balance. Let me show you what I mean. If you bought a starter home in 2023 and moved into a bigger home in 2013, your mortgage payment would have been about twice what your mortgage payment was on your first home. But if you bought a home 10 years later in 2013 and tried to upgrade in 2023, the mortgage payment would be about triple your first home payment, even though your equity in that first home was 10 times what it was in the previous scenario. This is what I mean when I say that most sellers have been locked into their homes, even though their property values have increased so much. Between inflation increasing the general cost of living and the cost of moving up to a home triple their current home cost, it's just not worth it for many people. But now with rates coming down, that new home is only going to cost about 2.5 times your starter home payment. It might not be great, but it's getting better, and it's going to get even better if rates continue to drop, which people are expecting. So economists are thinking that people are going to list a lot more homes this year. But just knowing that there's going to be more listings doesn't tell us everything we need to know, because if you're listing a home and then buying another one in the same area, this is a net zero for the housing market. We need to know how many of these homeowners are actually staying in the Raleigh area and how many of them are moving to a new metro area. To determine that, I looked at 2 things. First, we can use some Redfin data. Redfin measures how many people searching on their website are looking to stay in their current city or move to a new city. Back in 2017, when Redfin started keeping track, about 15% of buyers were looking to relocate. In 2023, that number was 26%. And right now, Raleigh's about equal to the national average at 26% of people currently living in Raleigh searching for homes on Redfin's site, looking at a different metro area. But last year, only 20% of people living in Raleigh were looking to leave, even though the national average of people looking to leave was about the same. So that tells us something. More people are looking to leave Raleigh today than were last year. If you look at the cities that people leave Raleigh for, you'll see that they're almost always cheaper, like Myrtle Beach, Greensboro, or Rocky Mount, with median home prices almost half of our prices in Raleigh, or they're different lifestyles like mountain or coastal towns. So it seems that prices have gotten to the point that some people in Raleigh are looking to move to more affordable locations, or they're looking to retire outside the area. So basically, there's new incentive for homeowners to sell, and there's evidence that more Raleigh residents are opting to relocate. Now, before we move on to the demand side and look at clue number 3 and 4, if you're looking to downsize or if you're looking to begin a search for your new home, you've got to check out my website.
Down in the description is a bunch of really cool stuff. We got links to newsletters, links to the best real estate website in Raleigh, and all kinds of other lovely stuff.
Wait, let me tell them. You can learn all about all the different towns in the Raleigh area. You can sign up for our newsletter. You can learn about how to prepare your home for sale to get the best price. Or you can schedule a consultation with me to discuss your move. My team would love to help you. So now on to clue number 3.
Clear.
You said a clear. Yes, yes.
The United Van Lines National Mover Survey tells us that in 2023, 60.1% of moves were moving into the state and 39.9% of moves were moving out of the state. So while people currently living in Raleigh might be looking to move out, way more people are actually moving into the state than moving out of it. And this ratio of people moving in to people moving out has stayed relatively stable over the last 4 years. It's always been about a 60-40 split. The latest data tells us that about 70 people are still moving into the Triangle every single day. That's over 25,000 people a year. So why are people moving here? There's a lot of reasons, but one of the big ones is the economy. And this makes sense because economists believe that our economy is really insulated from the slowing national economy. Tom Barkin, president of the Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond, told guests recently at the annual Raleigh Chamber Economic Forecast event, "I think Raleigh metropolitan area has been one of the bright spots, certainly in my district, I think in the national economy." Sarah House, managing director and senior economist for Wells Fargo Corporate and Investment Banking, agreed, saying, "Overall, we continue to see labor force growth stronger than the national picture, and that's consistent with the Raleigh metro area continuing to outperform the national economy." So there doesn't seem to be a reason to expect a slowdown in the number of people moving into the area, but that isn't the only demand pressure being put on the Raleigh market. What about people living here in the Raleigh area? How many of them are waiting for conditions to be right to buy homes in the Triangle? Let's look at pent-up buyer demand to see how many people are waiting on the sidelines. In a new report, the National Association of Realtors identified the cities with the most pent-up buyer demand. They calculated this by using several different criteria. They looked at the number of households able to afford the median-priced home at 6.5% mortgage rate versus a 7.5% mortgage rate across the 100 largest metros. They looked for cities that had a higher percentage of renters who could afford to buy a home at the median price. They looked for cities where sellers had stayed in their homes for longer than the national average. This could mean that more sellers are ready to sell their homes. They looked for cities with more affordable listings for first-time buyers, and they looked for job growth that outperformed the national numbers, income growth that outperformed the national numbers, and cities that had lower crime than the national average. Durham-Chapel Hill came in number 4 in cities with the most pent-up buyer demand. The wage growth in RTP was a large driver of that ranking, and we all know that what happens in RTP affects the entire Triangle area. So we've got more sellers likely to sell in the Triangle. We've got more buyers who can afford to buy homes in the Triangle. We've got a great economy outperforming the national economy, and the home builders are creating inventory. Again, no one can really know what's going to happen, but the clues seem to indicate a much more active real estate market in Raleigh in 2024. Will it be a buyer's market or a seller's market, or will it be more balanced? We call it a buyer's market when the buyer has more leverage because there are a lot of homes to choose from and not that many buyers shopping. That usually means there's more than 6 months of housing inventory. Remember that all markets are local, but right now, Cary has 1.1 months of inventory, Raleigh's got 1.9 months, Durham has 1.8 months, and Wake County as a whole has 1.7 months of inventory. Right now, it's still a seller's market in most places, and I think it's unlikely that we'll see inventory increase enough to put downward pressure on home prices. Most people just don't want to leave Raleigh, and those who are leaving are being replaced by a lot of people moving here. The activity is likely going to increase in accordance with how much the Fed drops rates. With 6 rate cuts a real possibility, if we see rates in the 5s, we should see more competing offers. Hopefully nothing like 2021, but if you've been waiting for a market crash to buy, I don't think 2024 is your year, at least not in Raleigh.
How do you know that? Instinct!
If you like this video, the YouTube algorithm thinks you're going to like this one, so click it to find out.